Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Seddon and Lacey's Comic Stash. And this week, Vision. We are diving into your number one of your top five list. And my Christmas present from you.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way to kind of buy good favour and someone backing you up by putting money over a counter and going, "Yeah, tell me you don't like it, fucker. I bought this for you." But yeah, just despite having bought off the Belarusian judge, I'm kind of hoping that you sort of see what I saw in it, and you sort of say about that favourites thing. I mean, it is hard. Maybe in about 2 years' time, we redo our top fives, and they might not change dramatically, but things might move around because I think sometimes they do. Sometimes things resonate with you more than others, and I know some of the things we had on our list was because we read them at certain times. But I I would say that it's probably the best thing in my top five, regardless whether it ever sort of slides down for love or something else. Sort of jumps up. Here we go. Before we even start talking about it at all, I will say it's a masterpiece. I do think it is a masterpiece in comic books. I think it's a masterpiece in writing. I think it's a masterpiece in any goddamn format you want to. And I think it is. I want to say it's a must read for everyone, but I might revisit that later because I think when we actually sort of start to talk about it, maybe I'll kind of tweak back into who I would maybe pick it being a must read more for more than others. But yes, getting carried away because we're not. Before that,
we need to get ourselves into our dank little reading corners.
What did you say? Our dank little what?
Reading corners.
Damn it! Sing a little song, Chris, because I've lost the reading corner.
I'm sitting in my reading corner.
I tell you what,
and I'm sitting here with my book, my tea, and my cigarettes.
I might actually,
and I want to keep away from the world.
Crimp that out and actually use that as the theme tune. Now, after all of that, I'm putting it in post, Chris. I can't find where I put the picture, but I'm having that song. That's the new theme tune. So, reading corner, you're correct. Now, what have you been up to in your filthy little reading corner this week?
So I felt after, lots and lots of superheroes and lots of colour and happiness and joy, I needed to be a miserable, fucking angry little goth kid again. I've been reading The Crow.
I thought you were going to say My Little Pony, the comic book. My bad.
So yeah, I have smashed through The Crow in a day and a half, thanks to being at work and having nothing else to take my time when I'm not taking calls. Fuck me, it is amazing. I had never read it because, as I said in a previous thing when we did about the films, it's always been one I've been looking at, but it's always too bloody pricey.
Yeah, it doesn't stay in stock very long, does it? Whenever an edition is released, it tends to fly out of stock very quickly, and then all of a sudden you're in the world of going, even if a couple of months has passed, buying one from Amazon Marketplace or eBay, and it being far more than you want to spend, even though you think it's going to be good. You're kind of weighing it up of going, I could buy 4 other series for the price that I'm having to lay down here minimum.
Yeah, because usually it normally sits around the 40, 50 quid, sometimes up to 70 quid mark. But post Festivus, I was like, "Oh, I've got some money. Let's have a look, see what's on Amazon." And I saw it there for 15 quid, and I was like, "You are mine. Come,
you will be mine.
Come to me." And yeah, it is the story of the film, pretty much. It is that story arc which they made into the Crow film, but it is fucking beautiful. It's all black and white.
I was gonna say, I remember like the art, and I remember it being visually stunning, and even in its black and whiteness. And I know we talked about this in The Walking Dead. That's not to say black and white means it's less. It's not like they couldn't afford color, I think sometimes it's actually much more difficult to do something in black and white to kind of convey what you're trying to kind of get across. But yeah, I do remember like the art being very, very striking. I can see why movie people saw the art style and went, okay, there's a movie in this.
Yeah, so the thing that I fucking love about the art is when he's the Crow, it's very, very, very black, hard edge lines. It's all very rigid and angry. And then when he's Eric with Shelley, it looks like it should be in a watercolor or in pastels.
Yeah.
It's all very faint. It's all very, very much lighter drawings, and it is just visually fucking stunning. And yeah, if you can find it at a reasonable price, get on it. If you like the film, then it's a fucking must-have. And I'm disappointed in myself that it's taken me, because it came out in '93, nearly 30 years to get the fucker.
But it's James O'Barr, isn't it? And he writes and draws it. So like it's kind of, and again, I mean, it was an indie when indies were indies. You know, like this wasn't during the time when you know, you had the super indies come out. Like Image weren't doing their thing, and like it wasn't as easy to get something published. And it's strange because the guy's probably made all of the money he ever needs to make out of this, and rightfully so, because you know it is a great comic book. But I've never really like looked at anything else he's done. Like I've never kind of gone through anything he released subsequently, and I presume there are subsequent releases. But yeah, it seems to be like that's his one big project, and I don't mean that in a mean way, like because often you do see that, don't you? Some people have like their big story, their big run, their big character, and kind of, I guess they put their all into that character. And I'm not saying like they're burnt out and they couldn't do anything else, but you know, maybe that's it. You know, they always say everyone's got a book in them, and I think maybe they put so much into that. And funny enough, I was just googling the Crow just to see, just to check that his name was James O'Barr. I couldn't remember if it was O'Barr or Barr. And as I was doing it, it come up, and I found a news story from 5 days ago that Nicolas Cage has got a pet crow, and he says because he likes goth stuff. So there you go. Not only do you recommend the comic book, but Nicolas Cage would recommend owning one as a pet as well.
Because have you ever seen Nicolas Cage's son? He is super goth. He looks a little bit like Marilyn Manson.
I guess that's probably maybe like he got it to keep his son happy. See, that's the thing. We're not only informative about comics, but we also tap into some of the world's greatest actors and Nicolas Cage.
So, what is in your corner this week?
Well, I like to be cutting edge, as I think we've shown on this show so far. I like to be right up to current day, and right now, in the modern X-Men world, there is a crossover event happening. Also, crossover event. It's ostensibly a limited series, but all of the X-Men books cross over into it, called Inferno. And actually, when we did the jumping on points for X-Men, this is actually the last story that Jonathan Hickman, who is the guy who I said has reinvented the X-Men really well, it's his last story on X-Men. But rather than read that, I've gone back and read the one from the 90s called Inferno, because I like to step back. The 90s X-Men Inferno, or in the Inferno crossover, actually did cross over in more than just the Uncanny X-Men book. It was also in X-Factor and New Mutants. But I actually went back to the Uncanny X-Men issues, and I have actually written this down because memory boy can't remember. So this is reprinting X-Men 239, or sorry, this was X-Men 239 to 243. And I went back to it because this was not a million miles after I started reading X-Men live, so to speak. And I must admit, at the time, I was kind of all hyped up on Marvel crossovers. Yeah, give me more crossovers, give me more characters. But I kind of wanted to revisit it because it's quite an interesting story because it links together a lot of, I think I said it the other week, Chris Claremont laid loads of seeds for stories throughout the years, and sometimes these stories pay off. And this had a payoff to lots of kind of ongoing X-Men stuff, whilst in traditional Claremont fashion, laying seeds for what is yet to come again. And I would say it's quite dark. Not quite as dark as The Crow. I'm not going to get carried away, but this was about a demon invasion of New York. So there is some links to the demon world of Marvel and in the X-Men universe. But and I say the Inferno crossover was across those couple of books, but actually at the time in publication, some of the other stuff did. You know, like there'd be a singular issue of Spidey where because he's in New York and all of a sudden there are demons and things like that. But you know, based around this kind of dark demon-esque story, and you start to find out stuff about Mr. Sinister, who at this time had been building up to be a big character. And for those that have followed X-Men in later years and probably seen like the cartoons and things like that, you know, he does become quite a big character. And you start to find out a lot about him. But just really, it was. I liked going back and reading it again because you can tell at this point Claremont's done a lot, and I think almost in himself he's going, I would like some clean slates for these characters. So I want to stop some stuff and I want to do some things that really, really leap us into a different direction. And this series certainly does it. And I think probably for the next 4 or 5 years of X-Men after this, everything is very different because of what happens in this story. And again, I won't go into spoilers, but yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's superhero fare. Or it's I shouldn't say superhero fare, it's mutant fare of the time. You know, it's got the melodrama, it's got demons, and I think it's very good. I might actually go and over the next week I might read the other bits because I have the New Mutants part of the story and I have the X Factor part of the story as well. But yeah, interesting little kind of step back into my past of comic books, and I'm glad I read it again because I think I liked it a lot more than I probably did the first time round.
Nice. So yeah, and always I was bring say, the happy joyous stuff to the corner.
Yeah.
Between the two of us.
Demons, death, goth. We've got it. We've got the lot. What more could you want? When I say what more could you want, I know you said a bit earlier about it, but for anyone watching this, I got given some Amazon vouchers the other day, very unjustly. I got given some Amazon vouchers for fixing the mother-in-law's phone. Now, I'll confess to anyone who's watching this, didn't fix it. She just wasn't using it properly. It wasn't broken in the slightest bit, but I did have to sit there for hours explaining phone basics. But I still don't think it was worth a voucher. But I have a voucher. What I thought I would do is I would, over maybe the next couple of reading corners, offer myself up to anyone who watches this, who wants to drop something in the comments. If there's anything you think would be good for me to read, or you just want to randomly pick something, pick it out and I'll use my Amazon vouchers to pick it up and I'll cover it in a future reading corner. Ooh. And I'm only doing that because I've got freebies. If it's cash money, you can all fuck off. I ain't spending my cash money on it.
But... So yeah, I've got my pile to work through, so I'm good for a bit. But I like the concept, and as you can probably tell by what we've covered and what's in our reading corners and what we're doing, you could probably get a feel for what it is that we like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Or if there's something that's like totally opposite to that you think actually it would open our minds and our eyes to something totally different. I mentioned it earlier, like My Little Pony comic. Cut a shit, for all I know. There probably is multiple ones, and maybe there's an absolute belter out there that would knock our socks off. Please don't recommend My Little Pony, though. I don't want to have to explain to the mother-in-law when she says, what did you spend those vouchers on? My Little Pony? I mean, she's got a bad enough opinion of me as it is. That's going to destroy anything that's left.
So we will go into the topic for this week, which is Vision. Seddon. Wax lyrical, my friend.
Yeah, it's worrying, isn't it? Because you kind of go, oh, I've said it's a masterpiece. Blah, 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 blah. Well, back it up, fucko. Well, let's give it some context first. So this is written by Tom King. Tom King has sort of subsequently gone on to. I mentioned him in Reading Corner a few weeks ago. I read Strange Adventures, which is him doing a 12-issue series set in the DC universe or DC Black Label, so kind of out of continuity. But for anyone who's currently reading DC comics, there is nothing out of continuity. Everything is in continuity. Every story is important, as DC Comics will currently tell us. But
didn't he do a Batman run as well? Didn't he? He did the new Batmans.
He took over from the Scott Snyder run. And he's also done let's call these like 12-issue maxi series. So he starts off and does this one for Marvel as I think he's kind of big coming out party of his career, like where people kind of go, wow. Then that leads to him getting the Batman gig. It leads to him getting, and I'm going to skip one because I'm coming back to it later, but then he does a 12-issue Strange Adventures. He's got a 12-issue, which I own and is close to the top of the reading pile, Rorschach from Watchmen series.
Okay.
He's also currently doing a Superman Woman of Tomorrow series, and I've forgotten the name of the other one he's got running currently, but he's kind of now got this reputation in the industry of you kind of let him have a character for 12 issues, go, do your thing. But this was kind of built off of this Vision run. Now, he had done stuff before this. He's actually written a novel, which I do have in my house and is, again, in a reading pile somewhere. And he had written a Vertigo series called Sheriff of Babylon, which I think I mentioned it in the Strange Adventure ones. It touches quite a lot on war because I think it's ex-CIA and I think has been in war-torn countries. So I think he tends to take a comic book character and a large part superheroes, let's say, and he has a story to tell and he puts these superheroes in that story, I guess. So we are introduced to Vision in, not to nick too much from Fight Club, but a very strange time in his life. And you're dropped in cold. So if you haven't been reading Marvel comics for many, many years, the first couple of pages of this, you'd probably go, what? Because, I mean, it's not the Vision that you've seen in the movies.
No.
And I think even me as a comic book reader who was reading a lot of comic books at the time, there's still that element for me. And we get introduced to him in a suburban house, in a suburban town. And there's kind of the scuttlebutt amongst the neighbours that there's a new family moved in. And then you get a family you get some neighbours come to the front door. And the front door opens. And there you have Vision. And you have a female Vision, a small girl Vision, and a small boy Vision. And my God, my memory is terrible. Do you get doggy Vision at that point as well? Is he in that panel? Oh, shame. Because everyone loves a doggo, especially a robotic doggo. So you are kind of thrust automatically into this, wow, what is going on here? Now, I think it is worth tracking at this point, and I know it's something you and I have spoken about kind of offline on this, is that don't worry too much about why and where you are when the story starts, because it does help you along the way. You do get an idea as the story goes on why the situation is what it is. So you don't need to go back and read 30 years worth of publication history to understand kind of how we got to this point. In fact,
So with the beginning bit, you say how it opens up. Yes, it you drop in cold, but there is also hand holding there with where they are. You can very quickly realize that it's family Vision and it's very picket fence, 2.4 kids, nice neighborhood, TV sitcom sort of family Vision.
And for anyone who is watching this who is more au fait with TV and movies, WandaVision.
Yeah.
You know, like it has that kind of idyllic setting, isn't it? You know, as you say, there are picket fences all abound, and it's a nice, polite community that we
yeah,
find ourselves kind of thrust into.
the neighbours come along and give them cookies.
Yes, yeah, I'm in. Shit, why do my neighbours never bring me cookies? I probably wouldn't eat them if they did bring them, but
Because you're in Ipswich, that's why.
it's true that. So to kind of borrow a little bit, and I always think this is a reasonably good way to borrow it, but like the kind of plot synopsis to maybe give people a flavour of what it is Vision wants to be human, and what's more human than family? So he heads back to the beginning, to the laboratory where Ultron created him as a weapon, a place where he first rebelled against his given destiny and imagined that he could be more, that he could be a man. There he builds them, a wife, Virginia, teenage twins, Viv and Vin. They look like him, they have his powers, they share his grandest ambition. Or is it an obsession? The unrelented need to be ordinary. Behold the visions. Theirs is a story of togetherness and tragedy, one that will send the android Avenger into a devastating confrontation with Earth's mightiest heroes. So I think, like, flavoursome wise, I think it's worth saying at this point before we go into any other part of it whatsoever is this ain't your standard superhero fare, is it?
No.
You know, this has superhero characters in it, and even in that synopsis, it says this will bring him into conflict with Earth's mightiest heroes, Avengers. So I think you're kind of going, oh yeah, okay, like good guys will fight each other. There's enough superhero stuff in this to, I think, satiate anyone's superhero desires. But my God, this story is not a superhero story, is it?
No,
this is a story about what it is like to be a human being, what it's like to not be a human being, what it is like to try and become maybe something you're not, to try and fit in. It's a story about the family, what family actually means, whether you can manufacture a family. This goes at these characters, and I think us as human beings and the human condition so much. Like it's and all done with, don't get me wrong, a banging really good page turning tale as well. Like, I don't want to undersell it. This isn't psychology forced kind of on you like a stale boring thing. There is superhero-y plots going on around it, but my God, this goes deep into and I say that, sorry, personally I found that this went really, really deep into who we are and why we do what we do, and seen through the lens of someone who isn't who we are and is deciding whether they want to do what we do.
Yeah, it is. It's a trope that has been used many a times in many a different formats. The whole, out of place sort of thing. We mentioned it last week on 1602, how easy it is to do that, man out of time thing. But you look back at things like Mork and Mindy, or
yeah,
Alf,
if we could, that'd be grand.
or all those sort of aliens living in a family unit thing. It is that sort of a story, but obviously Vision. I don't think you get a lot of superhero-iness to start with. I mean,
I think
takes
the first
to get there, but it is there. So if you want your superhero stuff, it's there for you. Is it a massive part of the story? No, and don't go in expecting it.
Yeah, for that first few issues, I think you're spot on. You kind of you are very much being introduced to this unit, aren't you? You're being told, or you're experiencing where Vision is at, and who the other characters are, who Viv and Vin are, and things like that. You are learning, like, not necessarily the seeds of why, but who. And I think that's the key thing with this story, isn't it? This is very much about the characters rather than the plot points that run behind it. As I say, there is a story, there is backstory. It gives you that. You do find out kind of why all these exist, but by the end of it, I didn't give a shit. Like, I really didn't. And I think that's a great thing for a story to do, is that, like, its core conceit, the thing that you would normally sell it on, the base level of a story, you don't care about the end. You care about the characters. You know, you are And then I don't think it's. I was going to say you cheer for them. I mean, that makes it sound a little bit kind of more popcorny flick of going, yeah, the heroes are heroes, and you go, yeah, punch them, biff them on the nose or whatever. No, you give a shit about all of the characters in this. You become, or I say you, I become, I became massively emotionally invested in all of the characters, and not only did I become massively emotionally invested in them, there were things that were done in the story that I hated seeing because it hurt me to see not necessarily good ends for every part of this. You know, like this
Yeah.
again. Like no spoilers, but this is a realistic view of the world with a family of androids. So,
Yeah.
but like this isn't like everything doesn't work out brilliantly for everyone. You know, there's not necessarily a perfect ending for every character that is experienced in here. And yeah, he made. And again, 12 issues. 12 issues can be a lot. But to be honest, I think in reality, probably by the end of issue 1, and definitely by the end of issue 2, he got me. He made me love these characters, warts and all, because
Yeah.
they are not perfect. And I think again, one of the key parts for me, like these are androids. These are androids with android brain patterns to a degree, but you could easily present them as not being able to make any mistakes, but actually they do. And when I say they make mistakes, there's actually a kind of, I wrote it down here. There's a line, and it's actually from issue 1, and I absolutely loved it. And they've met the neighbours who brought the cookies round, and they bin the cookies because they don't eat cookies. They're androids, they don't eat cookies. But they're talking about the term "they seem kind" was used,
Yeah.
and Vision corrects and kind of goes, "No, it's they seem nice." And then there's this discussion between the two, and again, I loved it because I think it's something you don't often see, which is people actually talking about language and how language is used. But it's certainly in the base of a superhero one. But as the conversation goes on and he explains they seem nice, and you get the point where she goes, then the phrase is meaningless. And I love this because again, Vision is trying to start a family. That's what he thinks he wants, but also he's an emotionless android to a large degree at this point. But as much as he's trying to do it, and it's just beautiful for me, it's obviously to assert as truth that which has no meaning is the core mission of humanity. And that just said so much to me because I hear a lot of the shit that I hear talked about, and I think, yeah, like, spot on. And then of course that's the writer kind of asserting that we don't have to get caught up in a load of mundane and like there's a load of politeness. But I just think again, this is the sort of stuff that made me love this as a comic book, is that it takes its time to, it makes the characters fleshed out because of things like that, stuff that you
Yeah.
wouldn't normally see. It's not just he goes, oh, I walked into a burning building and I saved one. You kind of go, no, like he's pointing out that I kind of want to be, I want a family and I want to be a human. But let's be honest, human beings can be dicks, and I love that it goes to that level.
Yeah. It's like a bit later on when the kids go to school.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we know everything. We see it once and we take it in. And I don't know, just try to learn, sort of don't go in and just spew out, every fact. It's
Yeah.
try to be normal kids and learn as they do.
Well, and like with that kind of core bit there, Vision is trying to create a family, and of course he wants his kids to go to school because that's what kids do. And he understands that they don't need to go to school, but the lesson is to try and get them to interact with human kids, and because he wants this family that he feels he needs to be normal to be normal.
Yeah, and it's like they have dinner time where they sit around the table. They don't eat because they're androids. They don't need to eat, but they sit there and they have a conversation around the dinner table as if like normal families do.
Yeah.
Because that's the point where everyone's together, so they discuss what's happened. And it's just little nods like that are just amazing because it's shit that people do that you just think is like normal and mundane and just, well, of course. But looking through it through a lens of an android that sees things as logic, and going, well, this is what they do, so logically we have to do this too.
Yeah.
There's another bit where they go to a restaurant later on, where the waitress comes out and goes, "Are you sure you want me to tell the chef not to cook any of it?" So yes, and in 45 minutes time, you'll bring the bill and we'll pay for everything that we didn't have. But because they're in a restaurant, they've ordered food, and
Yeah.
so they are behaving like normal people, and it's just nods like that are just fucking great on this.
Well, and I'll tiptoe. I mean, like we said, like we didn't. Well, we spoke about it beforehand, and we said we don't really want to spoil where the story goes. Like we don't really want to spoil sort of plot points and things like that. And it's not that it's a twisty turny. I think certainly for my part, I said earlier, it's an absolute masterpiece, and um, I think it's something that people should read. Do I necessarily think it's something that everyone would enjoy? No, I don't. But I still think I think it's a great read and an important read for people. But I think it would skew away from large parts of the audience. I think if you want, go back to what I was saying about like the kind of the conflict with the Avengers. If I don't know, I think maybe 14, 15-year-old me, when I was just getting into comics, I think this might have been too much for me. This might have been a little bit, whoa, like this is pulling me out. Now I'd like to hope that it wouldn't have been too much, but I don't necessarily think like the Fast and the Furious or Fast and the Furious audience, this isn't tailor made for them. But I think it's still so good. I'd say kind of go for it, have a read, because I think it might be really interesting for you. It might make you look at some stuff that you've never considered looking at before. But yeah, I think even avoiding spoilers, I think one of the things that we can tiptoe into is the the four main cast, the family. They are androids. They are not human. They are, as we've said, they are pretending to be human. Um, they become the most human parts of this story. So,
Yeah,
for at the beginning, there's a lot of you're almost they're being used as a conduit for you to see the human race, which you're a member of. Well, presumably everyone watching this is a member of the human race, but it allows that chance to maybe look at the ridiculousness, and we might even do some of the stuff that's ridiculous, and we might not realize it's ridiculous. So I think it gives you a really good opportunity to do that. However, there is a flip point, and when I say a flip point, it's not like and then a magic wand is flicked and all this jazz. But no, there is a flip point where they become the most human in here, and because the circumstances that they found themselves in and the connectivity of what would or is a family really starts to impact that. And you see these
yeah,
interactions, you see how sometimes being cold and logical about things can absolutely impact someone whether they've got emotions or not, because they've kind of learned that that's not the way that you would do it if you legitimately cared about someone and things like that.
yeah,
And as I say, like there's some even like kind of a third of the way through, like there's real gut punching scenes in there. I mean, like it sounds so daft to say, but there are points where they're in bed together. And no, this isn't a porny android comic for anyone who thinks that, but they're put in a setting where like most people would say is relatively intimate. So you're laying in bed and you're talking with your partner, and that connectivity that you would have as a human isn't there, and it makes these scenes horrible because it's devoid of that. And because it's devoid of that, it really hurts to see it, because you're seeing a couple and you're seeing no love, no emotion, and it's just it's horrible. It really kind of pulled at it, and you go. If anything, it told me like if I'm ever in that with and like obviously it'll never be like that with Andrea because she's amazing. I'll never be in bed with anyone else in case she ever watches this episode. But that would be like a cut-off point for me. I go, if I ever felt like that, if I ever felt so disconnected to the person next to me, or it was kind of all that, then I couldn't live like it. And yeah, I think it just
yeah,
shines a light on so many situations that maybe people find themselves in, and not because they are two androids, but because that's the point they find in life. Yeah, a wonderful treaty on what it's like to be a human and the shit sides of being a human as well.
yeah. One thing I do want to pick up on, which isn't spoilery really, but if you have watched WandaVision, they explain in a really, really good way how the Vision that you see at the end of WandaVision, with his memory wiped and being all silver and back to Ultron level settings, gets back to wanting to be in a family and stuff. They show how he got there, and there's also a drop in of with Wanda. Spoilers, Wanda's in it.
Yeah.
Of why Vivian or Virginia in it is the wife. Virginia's the wife.
Yeah. Viv's the daughter,
has memories that she doesn't know why she has them, because there are parts of her history and memory that are from Wanda. So even though this came out 5 years before WandaVision, it's like they knew that we were going to have WandaVision and explain away for people that if your only experience with Vision is through the films and WandaVision especially, it fills in that gap to explain how we've got from that as a point A to where we are now as a point B, and it's done so fucking well. When I was reading it, I was just like, yep, because to me there was a matter, because I was going in after watching WandaVision and that being where my head was of where they as a story, and I went, I don't get how I love it, but I don't get how they've got to this point. That bit came along and I was like, yep, done.
I think like I was saying a bit earlier, like I think if you're a comic book fan of Marvel and Avengers and things like that, I think, and you haven't read this, I think it's a really good read. But I think you said something spot on there. Like we talked about this when we did My Life as a Weapon, the Hawkeye series that we said a lot of the TV show borrowed from. This WandaVision, I don't think exists in the format that it was without this. Now, obviously, WandaVision is very Wanda heavy. This is a series called Vision. It is about Vision. It is Vision at a time, and you say Wanda's in it. But WandaVision as a TV show shares a lot of DNA from this. They took a lot from this comic book, didn't they? Like, there's a lot of inspiration from this, and again, like selling points. If you watched WandaVision and you liked it, read this, because I think if you like WandaVision, you're already predisposed, I think, to be very open-minded to what this story will do, and I think you will bloody love it.
And is faithful. Hate to, because obviously the TV show came afterwards, but is faithful in where those characters are that you know them in.
Yeah. You could rip this comic out of the Marvel comic universe, and to a large degree supplant it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, couldn't you? And kind of go, this is what happened, or this could be the natural progression if the creators wanted to do that in the TV universe as well.
But yeah, it's one of those because sometimes you obviously there's film version of character, and then there's comic version of character, and they are same name, same look, but can be completely fucking different.
Yeah.
Both these have such a similar DNA that how the characters are portrayed is the same as the masses would know them.
Yeah.
So there's not that sort of first point of entry of going, well, that's not how I expect them to behave, or that's not how they meant to look, and things like that. So I would say that if you love WandaVision, you should have no problem with getting into this and being straight there to go into it. And as I said, we're obviously avoiding plot points and stuff because I think everything that happens in this comes in at the right time. It comes in with the right tone. And you have to experience it as it comes and not
Yeah.
know what's coming
Yeah.
next. I smashed this out in 2 sittings.
Yeah.
Um,
I had to
so
read it monthly, Chris. Imagine what that was like, having to wait. And I say monthly, I think we were probably on monthly schedules at the time, maybe 3 weeks, but it was there were long months between issues. It was a painful
yeah,
wait for me between issues, and when I got to issue 12 and read it, I loved it, but I went, oh shit, like I'm not going to get any more of this, because we knew it was a 12 issue series. But yeah, it was hard. It was hard reading it monthly, mate.
but yeah. So is it in my top 5? It would be around the sort of bottom half now of that for
I'll
something
take
that
that. I'll take that. Fucking
it
turning you into a Marvel boy, mate. I'm getting you. I'm getting you.
wouldn't it, because also Crows jumped into my top 5 as well. But the number 1 will never be dethroned. It's got to be something fucking amazing to dethrone that. But you're right. This is a masterpiece
Yeah.
for a one and done story that, as I said, this isn't your superhero fare. This isn't fighting Thanos. This isn't booms and bangs and massive fight scenes and all of that. This is quintessentially a fucking amazing human family story told through the medium of comic books.
And I think, in all honesty, you could read this and never read another Vision comic book. Like you don't. You obviously, you can go back and get more. You can go and get back stuff before. You can follow it on. But as a standalone piece, you could just. It is in the Marvel universe. It tells you what you need to know about how they get there, and etc. etc. But yeah, but you could just go. I read that. I'm done, because it's perfect. I need no more. I am done. I think that's how good it is. If we haven't sold you on it already, I mentioned it earlier. There's a dog. Who doesn't want to see something with a dog in it? Like, everyone loves dogs. That's a big selling point. Well, Chris, what did you think of the art?
It's fucking beautiful.
I'm really glad you said that, because it's a big
It
selling point for me.
there are, especially some of the covers, I would have them as pieces. Um, there's the one where they're the whole family halfway through the door waving, and I'm just like, that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is stunning to look at.
It's a Gabriel Hernandez Walter. Now, I don't think, like, the actual kind of the pencil line or anything like that. I don't think it is anything like David Arja. But that thing you said about you'd have him as a poster and some of the covers, it hit the same quality for me as that Hawkeye stuff did, because it is beautiful. Design wise, it is clever. It is interesting, and it is different. And I think that's the thing I love. I mean, like, we'll flashlight kind of, as we normally do, sort of pictures up along the way. But like, I don't think Vision, and deliberately so, I don't think Vision has ever been made to look more like an android in the comics. Because I think generally, like, certainly probably post 5 years into his debut and onwards, they always humanize him up a bit more. But this
Yeah,
family that he creates, I mean, like, their eyes alone, like, they look like headlights of a car, but it's
yeah,
so beautifully and kind of deliberately done to, again, add to the story. I mean, not only are they great posters, but I think this is that lovely artist and writer connection where the artist clearly got what the writer was trying to get across, and
yeah,
the art doesn't only help tell the story because you can see what they're doing. The art helps tell the story because it invokes the reactions that the words are trying to get across to you at the same time. And you do across the series, you do get to see some familiar. I mean, I said in the synopsis there's mention of the Earth's Mightiest Heroes Avengers being mentioned, that Wanda's in it, and you get to see this artist take also on some of the more familiar characters. But for me, like, as great as the writing was, This is really one of those cases where the art makes it even better, and I find it almost hard to say because I love the writing of it so much that I think how could this be made better? But yeah, just a perfect marriage of art, and which of course is to a large part what comics are supposed to be, isn't it? You know, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be one or the other. I mean, we've talked on other shows about when kind of the comics boom happened and the image stuff, and I think at that point art become the only thing and the writing was put to the wayside, and I've seen it go the other way where art's put to one side because of the writers. But this is what you're really looking for in your comic books. You're looking for um, that that the story would be lesser without the other part of it, and I think
Yeah.
this really would not be as good if it was with a less skilled artist or a less skilled writer. Tom King is a fucking legend, isn't he?
Yeah, it is one of those of just like, I am so happy that you went. You have to read this so much so that you sent it to me for Christmas.
Yeah,
As I said, it is troubling the bottom of my top 5 of all time now. Um, it as I said, it's not your standard superhero comic book fare. It is a beautiful story of humanity and family told through Marvel heroes.
yeah. The kind of the heroes are what gets you to the party, isn't it? Like you go
Yeah,
into a comic book. We said covers before. You go into a comic book, and I think the cover art would grab you, but actually the name Vision would grab you because I think a lot of people would go, "Oh, I've seen movies and TV with him in."
yeah.
So like the superhero is element of it is what
It
brings you into the dance, and then you
it's
get
the
told an
sprinkling of
amazing
crack
story. Yeah, yeah.
to get you in, and then once you start, you're hooked.
And before we kind of toodle on a little bit on it, I wanted to touch on Tom King a little bit because, as I say, I've very recently read Strange Adventures, which is I would say similar in the vein of lovely art,
Mm.
and he takes a DC character and he has a story to tell, and he uses the DC characters kind of the vehicle to talk about war and the media and things like that. And I think he really kind of has now become. This is kind of his niche now, based off of this, of like these 12, and there are, as I say, a number of them that I need to get to. And when I say I need to, because I want to, because I loved what he did. He is actually. I think the comic book mood has changed a bit on him. So
Mm.
I sometimes I cheat on you and I watch some other and listen to some other podcasts about comic books and things like that. Partially because there's stuff I'm not reading, so it keeps kind of my mindset in. And I said earlier about everything matters in the DC universe now. It's kind of one of their things. And I know that DC Comics very recently seems to be under a bit of a barrage of criticism for maybe some lower quality, some lesser quality. However, for context, I will say that's probably or possibly just the podcast that I've listened to. And unfortunately, Tom King is one of the ones who gets a bit of blame for this. I think there's a bit of a backlash from your traditional superhero fans to stop coming in and taking our heroes off and telling your opinion pieces
Yeah,
with this. And I think probably like if someone read Strange Adventures, I don't necessarily think they would rush to read Vision. And I think that's why reading Vision as one of his first bits is probably the way to do it, because I think this is less about his opinion of war or his opinion of the media. This is, as I say, a reflection of the human race, and I think that's why this really stands out, because we're all humans, we all experience it, we all kind of see that. Whereas maybe some of his other works rub people up the wrong way. That the term woke and the term lefty and the term snowflake and things like that have been applied to some of his. Now, bearing in mind, he's kind of an ex-military man. He probably isn't all of those, but I think he's got an interesting vision on the world. But one of the reasons why I tinker with Tom King, and the only reason why I want to bring him up, is this Vision series, bearing in mind, masterpiece, wonderful, greatest thing ever, is widely considered his second best work. So, in theory, there is a better series that he's done out there than this. And I've never read it, and I'm leaving it till the last thing I read of his. When I've read all the other things that he's got out there, I'm coming to this. But he does a 12-issue series on Mr. Miracle. I say I've never read it. I own it digitally. I own it in softback. I own it in hardback. And I kind of, it's become a bit of a holy grail for me of going, I love Vision, and I've heard that this is possibly even better. And I almost don't want to touch it ever, because what if it's shit? But I mean, just for context, if you love this, apparently he has written a better 12-issue series than this as well.
See, after reading this, I am very much, because I've got issue 3 of his Batman run, the Bane one, because I saw it in I think there's a charity shop or something for like £1, and I was like, oh, it's Batman, it's £1, I'll buy it. But I didn't notice until I got home that it was number 3 of a run, and I was like, I really should get the other ones. Now reading this, I am very much the Tom King Batmans are jumping up that buy list.
I said to you, I really like his Batman run. I know that his Batman run again has its critics. I think people. I think the critics of it say it's a bit of a roller coaster. When it's great, and then when it dips really badly. I must admit, I didn't notice the dip so much. I think one of the shames of it is it does get cut short. So in theory, they'd said to him, "You've got 100 issues to tell your story." And again, I think after he'd started off quite well and it'd been quite popular, and he plotted out, and I think it was around, I want to say like issue sort of 60-ish. The sales weren't necessarily holding up as much as they once were, and I think DC was in a bit of a shifty around mood anyway, and they wanted to shift around the core writers for Batman, so they actually kind of take him off of it, but they let him, let's say, finish up his story with a spin-off series, Batman and Catwoman. But I mean, I really liked it. I think it's a great Batman run. I would say that it's more fair than this Vision series. That is it. Oh God, I don't want to sound like a wanker, but that's smart superhero. I think that's how his Batman come across. Maybe he's not pushing kind of such a core story or trying to say so many important things. Some of it is just there's a bad guy, but I think he does it fantastically well. So I would heartily recommend his Batman run as well.
Yeah, because obviously I fucking love Snyder's run. The 52 Snyder run is amazing.
I think a DC fan would probably take me out in the street and lynch me, because I'm with you. I love the Snyder run. I like the Tom King run more, but I think a lot of people do like the Snyder more, and I understand it. But Tom King, I'd have liked a little bit more.
But yeah, so that is in the ever-growing Amazon list, but that's, the next ones of buying once, if I get some nice vouchers or something from work.
Fix your mother-in-law's phone. That's how you get vouchers.
So both of us have said with this, it is amazing. But the big question: would you give this to a non-reader and go crack on?
100%. 100%. Now, I think it's tough. I don't think it's the easiest read. Now, and then again, I don't want to overstate it. It's not a very complex read either. But I think it's not.
See, I wouldn't give this to Will. I would not give this to Will, and even up to say mid-20s. I think, and you can shoot it down if you like, but this is what I think on this one. You give this to people who either have never read comics but are in their 30s, or lapsed readers that are late 20s, 30s, that have life experience.
That's a good point. Because I said it earlier, didn't I? I wouldn't have given this. I don't think I'd have appreciated it as 15-year-old me. Yeah. So I think you're spot on that actually that you probably. I'd give it to a non-comic book reader who's probably late 20s and above, because I think you would appreciate what it's doing more that way.
Because the main hooks in on this is humanity and life experiences and lived experiences, which
Yeah.
younglings, then it's not going to grip them or grab them in a way that this deserves.
Yeah, if you don't
So
realise the world's
I,
shit, it might not be quite so impactful. When I say the world's shit, like the world can be shit, shall I say, rather than the world is shit.
yeah. So as I said, I would definitely suggest this for anyone who is 30 plus, to jump in, and even non-comic book readers to jump in on that if you are
Yeah.
that, or if you are, have had a proper grounding in what life is, then you can jump in. So sort of me when I was in my mid to late 20s, then I'd have probably got it because having life experience by then. But this is not, and I say it's not for kids. There's nothing in it that I wouldn't show Will,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't allow him to read the story. It just wouldn't get the story. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
It wouldn't connect with him with what it's trying to tell.
Well, and I'd sort of say even like the stuff that it touches on, like family. Like obviously he's part of a family, but he's probably still at that age where he's not seen the other side of the family. Like he's seen the kid side of the family so far, hasn't he? And
Yeah,
like without, I don't. And again, you don't have to be a parent, but I think the older you get, the more you appreciate maybe what your parents had to go through raising people like us and things like that. And I think that whole family unit resonates with you a little bit more because maybe it was just me, but when I was a kid, don't get me wrong, my family were great and all that, but I was more bothered about like going down the park and having a kick about with my mates. Whereas I think the older you get, that family unit becomes more important to you because I don't know, maybe you lose people from it, or you see that potentially you could lose people from it. And I think, it tugs on those kind of heartstrings of going, once you commit to this as a group, it can be very fragile because you don't necessarily have control over it. But no, I think you are spot on there with what you say are going, that this probably sits with a more mature audience, but I don't mean it because of like it's mucky or it's got like violence in it. I think it probably just resonates with a 30-plus-year-old audience more.
yeah. It's like, obviously I wouldn't let Will read The Crow, but that's because it's fucking gory.
Yeah.
But this again, I'd let him scan through it and have a look at it and see how pretty it is.
Yeah.
And if you said he wanted to read it, I'd be like, yeah, if you want, but I don't think it would. It's not one for kids that would get it. Get what it's saying.
My eldest niece, and she isn't a comic book reader. I would. She's quite serious. Like she's quite a serious human being. She's. I mean, I'm not saying she's old before her time and all that jazz, but like she don't like. And I think like the stuff that she reads, the books that she reads, and things like that. Even that, when I was thinking about it, so I was going to say no, I'd give it to her. But actually, even with her, I think I'd rather wait. I think I'd rather her get another 5 to 7 years under her belt before, because I think it might lessen the impact if you read it too early. I mean, like this for me is, and I rarely give this shit out because I think they're precious. I think these sort of things are absolutely precious, and I think if you kind of, and again in a faux kind of ratings kind of way, I think if you hand out like 10 out of 10s like they're going out of fashion, actually like you've got nowhere to go, and I think it kind of lessens the quality of it. But for me, this is an absolute 10 out of 10 or 100 out of 100, whatever scale you want to use. This is amazing, and I think maybe that would worry me if someone read it at a point where they wouldn't see it for how amazing I think it truly is. And so I think that's a spot on. Don't go and buy it for your 10-year-old kids, people watching, because it'll be wasted on the little bastards.
So, only the second thing both of us have gone is a masterpiece on. This and The Killing Joke.
Yeah, and they were
both our number ones.
Yeah, and
as I say,
I know I said it earlier. I'm really pleased. Like, you know, as I say, I'd hand it to you. And if you'd have asked me, if I was a betting man, like which I am, but if you'd have asked me, I thought you would like it. That was one of. It wasn't just because I was trying to shill something that I liked. I thought you would like having seen the stuff you like, having seen, and then again, not just in comic books, but you know, obviously we talk about TV, movie, music, and things like that. It felt to me like something that you would get a lot out of. So I felt like it was almost a done deal, but it's still bloody nice to hear that you did. Now I can shill you all sorts of shit that I know you won't like, but pretend you will.
So a Young Bucks match.
Oh, what? That's fucking amazing. Actually, yeah, that's it's one thing I still need to work you round on that. Young Bucks versus Pockets and Danhausen. That's going to be where I'll get you.
So that is us for another week. As always, like, subscribe, ring the bell. If you've read Visions, comments. Let us know.
And if you haven't, go and buy it and read it, you shits. Gotta stop saying that. Why do I get all insulting recently? Why am I calling everyone shits? Apologies, everyone, but yeah, buy it and read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, next week we will be back and we will be discussing comic book adaptations in the form of TV shows,
which we've never done before. And anyone who suggests that there might have been an episode where we did that didn't come out of the sausage machine that is our streaming software, they're lying to you. This will be the first time ever.
Yes, as we said, the only episode 18 is about 1602.
Yeah. And the TV one was always episode 20 and always will be episode
20. So until next week, we bid you adieu and goodbye.
Thanks for watching, and just remember, you can join the Cult of Egg by liking and subscribing to this YouTube channel. We release regular content where we talk about all things geek, all things pop culture, and all things that we're interested in. You can also come along and join the discussion on Facebook groups and Renaissance Cast. And you can join us on our Twitch channel where Stu regularly streams games. And if you'd like to support us, then please follow the link for the Patreon. Thanks very much.